Chapter 13, Section 9. Explore Military Organizations from Revolutionary Times. Introduction. The American Revolution began in 1776. Great Britain had a well-paid and highly skilled army, but the Americans did not have a professional army. Instead, General George Washington trained volunteers to fight the British troops. These volunteers became the Continental Army. The Continentals fought the British on land, but Americans needed more than an army to win the war. They also needed to fight the British at sea. Soon, two new military organizations were formed, the Continental Navy and the Continental Marines. These military organizations were the ancestors of today's United States Navy and Marine Corps. After the war, George Washington's old headquarters in New York State became an Army training school. Today we know it as the United States Military Academy at West Point. Let's take a look back at how these three important institutions began. The United States Navy. The Second Continental Congress approved the first American Navy on October 13, 1775. The fleet of ships was known as the Continental Navy. The Americans knew that Great Britain had the best navy in the world. Naval leaders decided it would be foolish to attack big British warships. Instead, the Americans used smaller ships to attack British supply ships. Without supplies, the British army suffered. After the war, the new U.S. government broke up the Continental Navy. On April 30, 1798, Congress formed a new department of the Navy. Today, over 400,000 men and women serve in the U.S. Navy. The United States Marine Corps. Less than a month after creating the Continental Navy, the Second Continental Congress created two naval units that would go from sea to land. These units were called the Continental Marines. After the war, the Marines were organized into a corps within the Department of the Navy. The Marines have served in every major sea attack since 1775. Today's Marines are trained to fight in combined land, sea, and air operations. Over 170,000 men and women serve in the U.S. Marine Corps. The Military Academy at West Point. West Point was a key location during the American Revolution. It sat along the Hudson River. Whoever controlled West Point could control the surrounding New Jersey, New York area. General George Washington made West Point his headquarters in 1779. In 1790, the U.S. government bought West Point from a private landowner. On March 16, 1802, Congress created the United States Military Academy at West Point, or West Point Academy. Originally, West Point Academy trained military engineers or designers. After 1812, the school widened its training. West Point graduates received a college degree and become officers in the U.S. Army. West Point Academy has trained some of the greatest Army officers in American history. Some famous graduates include Robert E. Lee, Thomas Stonewall Jackson, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and Douglas MacArthur.